Well, if there's one thing about being subscribed to just Alex's channel, it's the fact that he's recently been doing a lot of these quick videos, wrestling news videos, outside of his live streams. Like, of course, he's going to do a live stream tonight for AEW Dynamite, as well as his predictions for Double or Nothing. But with that said, outside of those, he's been doing these quick wrestling news vids, or at least giving his opinions on some of the news items that come out. And today, a new news item came out that he gave his thoughts on. And apparently, WWE, from what he read from the Wrestling Observer, courtesy of Brian Alvarez and Dave Meltzer, and I guess followed up, if not kind of differently acknowledged by Andrew Zarian of the Madman podcast, it seems that WWE is ending the brand split, I should say. WWE is ending the brand split, but not really. Let me explain. We all know that right now, the current state of WWE on the main roster is their talent pool isn't what it used to be. I mean, about a year ago it was, but now at this time it isn't. And a lot of what they would need talent-wise is in NXT. And whether or not they bring them up in the near future, like Nikita Lyons, Braun Breaker, whoever they choose, yeah, they'll be an asset to whatever brand or show they put on. But it all depends on how much of a focus they're going to get in the near future, depending on when they show up on Raw and Smackdown. However, till that time comes, apparently WWE has decided that they're not going to end the brand split, although it seems and sounds like they're going to. Instead, they're making the announcement that certain superstars, men and women, will be appearing on both shows at certain times. In other words, Raw stars will show up on SmackDown, SmackDown stars will show up on Raw, vice versa. And they'll just go along with whatever is planned on those brands, or whatever the creative team, I guess, has in store with them, or in store for them, I should say, and go from there. Now, I'm sure Cody's going to have some say because they don't want to upset the cart with that guy, so he's going to be in the clear. Same with Ronda Rousey and even Bianca Belair and a few others. Maybe not everybody, but a few. So they're not going to rock the boats on any of those. But this does bring up the question, what's the point? I mean, I think Alex said it best. What is the point of even coming up with that kind of decision? What's the point? What's the point of coming up with that kind of decision? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. I mean, when you think about it, what sense does it really make for WWE to say, that, or at least indicate that they're kind of ending the brand split, but not really. And by trying to circle around that, they're saying, yeah, we're technically not ending it, but we're going to allow certain superstars to show up on different brands from other brands. What sense does that make? It makes no sense. It makes no sense. It's like if, I'm working for Target now, right? I'm working for Target. I used to work for Walmart, right? It's like if Target and Walmart were under the same control of the same person. He owned both, companies. Thank God that's not the case. But let's say one person owned both companies. And he said basically, that they're going to remain, even though I own them, even though I own both companies, they're going to remain separate. They're going to remain their own individual companies. No changes whatsoever. It'll be like nothing has really changed, right? Well, what would happen one day if he decided to come out and say, you know what, I've had a change of heart, or at least I had this brilliant idea thanks to my team. What if we allow some of the employees to go back and forth and work for each other? What sense does that make? Huh? What sense does that make if the guy that owns both Target and Walmart Again, this is fictional. This is not a real situation. Let me clue you in on that. It's not real. This is just to kind of exemplify, what's going on with WWE. But what if the guy that owns both Target and Walmart decides, he's going to allow that? Well, first of all, as I said, he's just going to leave things as are, as is, right? He's going to leave things as is. Nothing's really going to change. It'll be like nothing's changed, period. I know I just repeated myself there. I do apologize. But let's say that happens. But then all of a sudden, he decides he's going to switch things up. He's going to do what he can to please the customers, please the sponsors, please those that are investing stock into the companies, together and separately. He's going to switch things up to make them more happy. And he decides, you know what? Not many things are going to change at all with these brands, but I am going to allow certain employees to go back and forth and work for different brands on certain occasions. Again, what sense does that make? Like, let's say I'm scheduled one day to do carts or do cashiering at Target, and then the next day or 2 days later, oh, you're going to go to Walmart and work there for the day. What sense does that make? Huh? What sense does that make? I mean, yeah, I'll be getting a paycheck from the same guy, don't get me wrong, but what sense does that make if, let's say, I go over there and one of them asks me, what are you doing here? And I say, well, the boss wants me here because, he figures you need help. And they look around and they're like, we don't need the help right now. Or we're fine. What sense does that make? I know it's a strange comparison to make, but what sense does that make unless you're going to merge them both into one? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. It's like if my mom, she works for Cape Incorporated right now, which is a Head Start association program, whatever. Let's say Cape, where she works at, the Northern California district or version, let's say Cape of the Northern California version, gets bought by the Northern California school district. In other words, the school district of Northern California buys out all the Head Start programs, including Cape. Here's the thing. What happens if the person that buys them out says nothing's going to change, things will remain the same, but then down the line they decide, me and my group, we've had a change of hearts. We want to do something that's going to please the parents, please the sponsors, please our investors, everything, the whole California educational system. We want to do something completely different. And then they decide one day to tell some of the preschool teachers at some of the Cape offices across Northern California, oh yeah, today you're working with the preschool kids, but tomorrow some of you are going to be working with 2nd to 5th graders, or 3rd to 4th graders, or 5th to 6th graders, or junior hires, or high schoolers and all that. How do you think that would make those teachers feel? Knowing they probably don't have the experience to do that, or even the degrees, and yet they're being told, this is what you got to do the next day, this is who you're going to teach. What sense does that make? What sense does that make? It makes no sense. Which, again, as strange as a comparison as it makes, or as it is, says a lot for what's going on in WWE right now. What sense does it make to tell someone like, a Bianca Belair, who's the Raw Women's Champion, oh yeah, by the way, you're going to show up on Smackdown Friday night? What sense does that make to her if she's got a program, leading into Hell in a Cell against Asuka? What sense does it make for her to be there? What, you're going to have her confront Ronda Rousey and tease champion versus champion unification there? Is that it? I mean, that would be great. A great dream, a great match to build up to, don't get me wrong, but seriously, is that what you're going to do? You're just going to build up this feud so you feed her to Ronda? Or you feed Ronda to her? Is that the only reason she'd show up? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, folks, whatsoever. What, you're going to bring Cody in so you could tease the potential matchup between him and Roman? Is that why he's showing up? Not just to build up his feud with Seth Rollins, but, for Hell in the Cell, but to build up, a confrontation with Roman? Is that why you're bringing Cody in? Okay, fine, but, what then afterwards? You're just going to do that for one time and then he goes back and stays on Raw for a while? Well, until, he's needed again? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, okay? I mean, if you want to do something like this, fine, but do it as you get close to, I don't know, let's say SummerSlam or Clash at the Castle. Do it as you build to one of those events. And why? Because if you're planning to do certain matchups for those events, it makes sense for those, matches to be built up around that time frame. Not like, not in this capacity. Not on Memorial Day weekend. And that's the only other reason they're doing this. Memorial Day weekend. A lot of people are going to be on vacation. A lot of people are going to be in hotels. Wrestling fans are going to be traveling. Wrestling fans are going to stay in there. They're going to be like, ooh, what do we do to get a good crowd? Oh, I don't know. Let's bring in some Raw stars that shouldn't be here. Are not supposed to be here because they're on a different brand. It doesn't make sense. It really doesn't, unless you're going to have Vince McMahon come out on Smackdown and say, the brand split's over. And that's it. But that's not going to happen because they don't want to upset the apple cart for, Fox and Xfinity, Comcast. They don't. They don't want to upset the apple cart. Because if they do, they know they may not get a chance to go anywhere else afterwards. They'd be stifled. They're going to lose a lot of money if they upset the apple cart. But again, it's as strange as a comparison as it is. Like I said, it's like if one guy owned both Target and Walmart and at first said nothing's going to change. It'll be just like it always is and everything, but you're just under the ownership of one person now. But then later on, that person decides, you know what? I've changed my mind. I want to make my sponsors, my investors, and everything happy. I'm going to switch people around in different places. What sense would that make? Huh? You have someone that lives in Turlock that works at the Turlock Target, and all of a sudden they get told the next day they got to go to Modesto and work at the Modesto Walmart. And then when they get there, they find out from that person they don't need the extra help. They're fine, but yet they've been told. Yet they have to tell them, "But our boss assigned me here because he feels it will make the investors happy." What sense does that make? It's the same, like I said, with the whole situation with if my mom's company or my mom's preschool company that she works for, Cape, got bought out by Northern California's educational system, and the NorCal educational system decided at first nothing's going to change, everything will be just like it always is, but then one day they decided to keep the investors, the parents happy and everything. They're going to switch things up, and then they tell my mom one day, yeah, you're working with the preschool kids here at Best Plat for today. That's great and everything, have fun. Oh, by the way, before we leave, we got to let you know that tomorrow you're going to go to the main high school in Oakland, one of the more popular high schools in Oakland, California, and you're going to teach there for a day. What sense does that make for her? To one day go to Best Plat, do what she's usually doing, and then be told before she leaves or during that day, oh, by the way, you're going to go to Oakland the next day to teach at one of the high schools. What sense does that make? It makes no sense for her to do that, for her to be there. Especially if she doesn't have the degree or anything to do that. The point that I'm getting at is this decision to say, oh, we're ending the brand split, but we're not technically ending it. We're just saying certain superstars are doing this and are just going to be here and there for a while. It doesn't make sense. You either end the brand split, or what you do is you bring up certain talent that you feel is ready from NXT to fill the gaps missing in both brands, and you keep the brands separate. Because I think Alex said it best. Fox and Comcast, Universal, NBC, they're not stupid. They hear this, and yeah, it might tickle their ears like, oh, okay, the brand split's not ending, but they're just doing this. Do you not think they realize what could happen? Do you not think they're not going to pay attention and see that, wait a minute, they said this was only going to happen on a few occasions, and yet it's happening regularly. What's going on here? Do you not think before, SummerSlam or before Clash in the Castle or whatever, or even Money in the Bank, they're not going to hear about this, see what WWE is trying to do, confront them and say, you ain't doing that. We see what you're doing. You tried to pull the wool over our eyes, and you almost did, but you're not doing that. You think they're not going to confront them and say, no more of this shenanigans. You either get a full roster for both brands, or basically you choose one network over the other. And that's what it's going to come down to. That's what it's going to come down to. They're either going to get confronted eventually by NBC, by Fox, be told, hey, get these brands separated, get enough people on both brands to keep them separate, or it's either us or them mentality when it comes to the networks. And that might be what it comes down to. It's not going to come down to an agreement of, oh, well, we could do this with the condition that Fox gets all the championship matches and everything when we have to have the championships defended. It's not going to come down to that. I mean, it may, but it won't. Instead, it's going to come down to either build up these rosters to make them individually their own, or you choose one network over the other. And that's it. That's it. And who is it going to be? Who will it be? Will be the question. Because if it's Fox, pretty much bye-bye Raw. And maybe some people will look at that as a blessing, but the end of a legacy. If it's USA, bye-bye SmackDown. Some people would look at that as a positive, but also the end of a legacy. So it's a win. So basically, it's a lose-lose situation for WWE when it comes to one of the shows. It's a win-win for one of the networks. Period. But you see, this is where it's going to come. But you see, this is where it's going to come in by WWE in the behind before they know it. Because they think they're going to be slick with doing this, and yet they don't realize it's going to catch up to them and bite them in the rear. That's what's going to happen. And they need to be aware of that. They need to be. But what do you guys think? What are your thoughts on WWE basically saying they're ending it, but not technically, just doing something to work their way around it? Do you think, it's going to catch up to them? And they're going to have a choice of one network over the other? Or do you think the networks will tell them it's either us or them? Or do you think they'll inform them to say, hey, build these rosters up, make them in their own? What are your thoughts? Comment down below, live chat during the premiere, like the video. You know what to do. Otherwise, to help support this brand. And until the next time, guys, I will talk to you all later. Super thanks will be enabled at the end of the premiere. And until then, peace.